This interview is with Dr. Lucy Hadfield, a lecturer in the School of Physics and Astronomy. We discuss her experience from the Rector's Committee and the school's Equality and Diversity Committee, as well as her memories from teaching at a boarding school. You're listening to Insight, the University of St. Andrews Physics Society's podcast. I'm your host, Veronika Sedláková. Join us as we journey through the lives of St. Andrews academics, discovering their passions, inspirations, and motivations. Today's interview is with Dr. Lucy Hadfield. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking me.
Before we start, I would like to note that when we're recording this, the circumstances do not allow us to meet in person, so we're conducting the interview online. I would like to apologize to our listeners if the audio quality is lower as a result of this. Thank you for your understanding. Without further ado, Dr. Hadfield, could you please tell us about what your positions are here in St. Andrews?
Yep, so I am an education-focused lecturer. So effectively that means that I am primarily involved with delivering the teaching, and my role particularly focuses on teaching at sub-honours, so at level 1 and level 2. I coordinate the Gateway to Physics and Astronomy programme, which is a widening access programme that allows people from maybe non-traditional backgrounds to attend St. Andrews and gives them an alternative entry route to studying here.
That sounds really great. And could you tell us what was your path to these positions here in St. Andrews?
Yeah, so my path is a bit muddled actually. So I did my PhD, and my PhD was in astrophysics. So I worked on massive stars, and I did my PhD at the University of Sheffield. I then took a postdoc in the US. So I went out to work with Hubble data. So I went to Rochester, to the Rochester Institute of Technology, and I was not quite sure when I took the postdoc whether I wanted to go down the academic route, but I sort of just bumbled my way into a postdoc, so I thought, why not? And then I got there and I realised quite quickly that it really wasn't for me. I was at the point in my life where I wasn't particularly focused on academia anymore, and I wanted to change, so I decided that I would hop back over the pond and come back to England, and I actually became a school teacher. So I taught A-level physics for a wee while in a boarding school in North Yorkshire, and it was at that point when I actually realised that I really enjoyed teaching and I really found what I thought I was good at. And so I was deciding where to go. I'd been in my job for a couple of years, and I decided that I was ready for a change. And I saw the Gateway to Physics and Astronomy job advertised. They were specifically asking for somebody to come and coordinate a new programme. And I thought that was really exciting. So I applied, I came for an interview, and they said, there were 2 positions available. Which one do you want? And I said, well, I only want the Gateway job. And 10 years later, here I am still teaching and coordinating the Gateway to Physics programme. So I've done some sort of weird loop, as my little girl would call it. I've done a loop-de-loop to end up at St. Andrews. And I think it's actually helped me figure out who I am and what I enjoy. So I don't have any regrets. I was a wee bit miffed when my postdoc went a bit wrong, but I think I've now learned to live with the fact that we're not all cut out to be researchers, and that we all have our strengths in different areas. So yeah, maybe different to some academics here.
That sounds really interesting. I didn't know that you were a high school teacher in the
past. I can deal with the 16-year-olds, all right. I wasn't so good with the 11-year-olds. So I learned a lot of things. And I also was, because it was a boarding school, I was also assigned to a boarding house. So I spent many Friday evenings putting about 20 boys to bed, which is quite interesting. I have quite a few stories of what used to go on behind closed doors. It was quite interesting. A good time in my life, but certainly a lot calmer these days.
Oh, well, since you're mentioning that, can you tell us some of these stories from the boarding school?
Yeah, just about the time when Mankinis were quite popular, and boys thought it was quite funny to try and embarrass female teachers by putting on Mankinis, but let me just say it just didn't embarrass me at all. I just found it hilarious. And it was a monastic boarding school as well, so I got quite an insight into the Catholic Church and working with monks. So my line manager was a Benedictine monk, So I got invited to Vespers, and it was actually quite an interesting time, completely different to my background and my upbringing. But no, I learned a lot in that job. I think I grew up quite quickly when I took that job.
That sounds really interesting. Yeah, thank you. My next question was going to be about the Associate Dean of Science that I found that you also were or did do at some point.
Yeah, so I got a secondment down into the principal's office, and that was in semester one of the last academic session. So this was just a temporary position until they advertised for a full-time associate dean, and it was really interesting. So I suppose as I've sort of developed my career at St Andrews, I've taken on more responsibility within the school, and that's really good. I really like that. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to see what happened outside of the physics building, because I think sometimes we don't really know what goes on inside the university. So I applied for it, and I got it. I was quite surprised that I got it. I didn't think I would. And that was really good. It was so nice to see what goes on in terms of some of the reports that Bruce fills out, some of the questions that we're asked to provide information on, how that gets used, how decisions gets made. So yeah, lots of committee meetings. I think that would be my main sort of summary of what goes on. But I think what they do is really good, actually. I think it's nice to see it from the other side. And sometimes when we're asked to do things, we don't always understand why we've been asked to do stuff. And I think getting a chance to see the logic behind what comes out of the principal's office and what the centre is trying to do, I think that's really invaluable, because I think you start to see it you get to see the bigger picture a wee bit. And also you get to see how things are happening in other schools. So I had to read external examiner reports and write summaries on reports for all the science schools, and it's nice to see what other schools are doing well, and if there's anything we can learn from that, and how we can share best practice. So yeah, no, interesting. It was an interesting time. Made me realise how much I enjoy teaching, I think, as well. I think the Associate Dean is a full-time role, so I think you have to be prepared to have a complete change in direction of your career, and that was useful because it made me miss being in physics. I think I was glad to get back. I didn't realise that I'd miss it so much, because I think when I applied for it, it was at the end of a busy period, and I think sometimes you feel like you're ready for a change, and it was good because it got me a bit of a break and it got to see a different perspective of things. But then when I came back, it was great. It was just like coming home. It was brilliant.
And another piece of work that you do is at the Equality and Diversity Committee here in physics. Am I right?
So I've been covering for Vivian Wild, who's been away on maternity leave. So I've been acting as the E&D chair, so the chair of the until COVID struck, and then we all got really super busy. So I've not been so active on that side in the last couple of months. But I think what we've been trying to do is just trying to make sure that the School of Physics is a really welcoming place, and nobody feels like they are being picked on or they feel uncomfortable with anything. And we make sure that everything we do is with the best of intentions, and we've thought about whether we are discriminating against any person just by the way we ask for a job advert, the way we advertise for some things, the way we arrange our colloquia speakers. So it's really interesting. I think what goes on behind the scenes, I don't think anybody really appreciates. So we scrutinise things like the gender of colloquia speakers, the gender of students coming in at all levels, the gender of staff, whether some staff are being promoted, whether there's any correlation between gender. We also look at the diversity of the student body quite a lot. I worked really hard last year with the school president to organise wellbeing events for the students, for the staff, getting people talking about mental health. Yeah, so when we were more in person, it was really hands-on, and it was really enjoyable, and it was nice to see that some of the things that we were doing sort of were helping people, and it was just nice to get people talking. So I'm hopeful that when COVID disappears off the radar, that we can get back to having a bit more normality, and we can start getting people sort of chatting again and working face to face, which will be nice. So yeah, no, I like the E&D committee. I think it does some good stuff. One of the things I think is not quite where I want it to be is that people don't really know what we do, because we do so much stuff, so much good stuff. So I think that's probably over the next few years, that's one of the things we need to work on, is to get the information known about what we're doing a bit more, particularly with the students. I think the staff know what we do because we are constantly bombarding them with surveys and stuff, but we work very much behind the scenes with the students. The school president tends to be our face, and rightly so. But I think sometimes it would be nice if they knew what we were doing all the time to make sure that physics was a warm and welcoming place.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that would be useful. Personally, I was aware of the Equality and Diversity Committee, and I think it's a very respectable work that people do there.
Yeah, I think I think what is really good is to see how things are changing as well. I mean, if you take when I went to university 20 years ago, I think there were 3 girls on my programme. There's 2 female academic members of staff. It was very much male orientated, and it was very much you got there because you were a female, you got an offer because they wanted to boost their female numbers. And I think that perception is not good, and it's not also correct. And I think people have worked hard over the last couple of decades to get rid of that perception that we're where we are because we're actually pretty good at what we do. And I think that has been nice to see change, and I think seeing people's attitudes change and to see more people doing A-level physics or higher physics, I think that's nice to see sort of come through the system. It just takes so long for anything to happen that I think the work that people who are on E&D committees, I think that's really, really vital to make sure that we are a diverse school and that we are welcoming to everybody and we don't put people off. I think that's really key. So yeah.
That sounds really hopeful. Yeah. Do you think there's something more that has to change in academia and perhaps universities and education in general to make it more equal and diverse?
I think it's such a tough one. So I come from not a working class background, but I come from a very middle class background. My family is very diverse, so I'm the only member of my family to go to university. So the normal kind of stuff that you get from a widening participation background, and I can see from first hand that the cycle is so hard to break. I'm a firm believer that you have to get children when they are so small to get them out of the rut that they're in. I think we like to believe that there are chances for people to get out and to break the norm, but it's so tough. You have to work so hard at it, and it has to be driven by the parents. I was lucky that my dad was very practical. He was very hands-on-y, so he would fix cars, he would make things with electronics, he was always soldering, and I think I saw that from a young age. And I think you have to really get the parents on board, and it has to start really young, and I think that's what I would like to see change. I think it's terrible that we are in 2020 and there are children going hungry, and I think we are talking about the big picture, and we just need a magic wand to fix everything, and I don't know what the answer is. I wish it would change, and I think that there are things we can do, and I think the early years programs where we're getting in when children are really young and we're trying to narrow the attainment gap right before they even start going to school. I think that is really key, because I think by the time a lot of the programs that we do where we're trying to intervene at A-level or age 16, I think sometimes that's too late because that attainment gap has already been set in. So we need to go right back to the beginning, to basics, to nursery age kids, and we need to make sure that by the time they're at school they're able to be on a par with people who have come from a more privileged background. And I think until we can get that fixed at the bottom end, I think we're just putting sticking plasters on things. So I think I'd like to see more people doing work at the lower end of the spectrum, working with primary age school kids all the way up. And I think if we can get a programme in place where we can identify people early and we can follow them right through their schooling, I think that's the best chance, because we need to give them role models, and we can do that as academics, but we need the programmes in place where we can help people right from being small all the way up, to keep inspiring them as we go along. I think that's key. I think that's probably what I would like to see happen in the next couple of decades, is being able to trace and follow people from being young all the way up to being applying to university.
That sounds really interesting as an idea, probably very important, and obviously a great goal. I also wanted to ask if you have personally seen some examples of good or bad practice of
So the
this?
bad practice, I thought that was a bit of a trick question. I don't always agree with my colleagues, but I wouldn't say that I've seen any bad practice. I think at St Andrews we're really lucky is that I think the teaching team, whether they're education focused or they are researchers, I think everyone is 100% or even 150 or 200% committed to the teaching. So I think we do a really good job at St Andrews. I think in terms of the good practice, I think there are so many things that I could talk about. I think what Cameron does in the labs, and especially with COVID and being able to take some of the labs online, I think that's commendable. I don't think I could even begin to climb that mountain that Cameron's sort of managed to overcome this semester. And I think in terms of really good practice, I think Anta Colney with the simulations and the clicker questions and the interactive lectures, I think that's so great. That's so different to when I went to university. We were very much sort of chalk and talk. You got a few demos if you were lucky. So I think how the whole teaching system and the interactive learning and the people who are driving that aspect of the teaching, I think that's amazing. And I think that is probably one of the best things that's probably happened to higher education over the last 10 years or so. And I think it's really important that we have people like Antje who are continually striving to make their teaching better and looking what other people are doing around the world as well. So taking the results of all the physics education research that's going on to try and improve what we're doing. I think sometimes it's easy to sit back and say, well, actually this year I'll just have an easy year, I'll not make too many changes. But there are people like Antje and Cameron and Paul Cruikshank who are always trying to look at what they're doing and see if they can do it better or adapt it to how our cohort is changing. And I think that's really good. I think that being able to adapt and bring in the results of the education research is actually really crucial in keeping our teaching fresh and keeping it up there. So I think that's probably good practice, I think.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, and I can honestly only agree to that. But I was also thinking if you can compare this to your time in the USA, you said you were, or
yeah. So Rochester was quite good. So it was a institute. So I didn't really have a great deal to do with the students there. So I couldn't really tell you because the physics students were sort of separate. So I was more just in a research institute. But I did chat to some of the academics, and they were really big on the clickers. The system is quite different, lots of midterms, not so many big final exams. It was quite interesting to get the contrast. But again, I think they're very much there because they get all sorts of people on their courses, some specialists, some physics specialists, some non-physics specialists who were just taking extra courses. That was really good. It was good to see the contrast actually.
That sounds very interesting. Now, maybe moving on to some more general questions. I always wanted to ask, because when you taught first-year mechanics, you were famed for playing funny videos, but also conducting experiments, such as when you put a long plank on the table in Theatre B and like one end was sticking from the edge of the table, and then you stood on the loose end to demonstrate, I think it was torque. Yeah. My question was, how do you come up with these?
YouTube, it's brilliant. I'm actually really bad. So I would say as a person, so the reason why I didn't feel I was very good as a researcher is that I find originality quite hard. Okay, but if you want me to come up and take something that somebody else has done and tweak it, I'm a pro at that. Okay, right. So having kids, like making birthday cakes, I am now a whiz at making birthday cakes. Okay, I can decorate them until you would think you'd bought it from a shop. But if I have to come up with the idea for the cake, I'm rubbish. And I think with my teaching, I'm very similar. What I like to do is I like to see what other people are doing. They have the original ideas, and then I can try and tweak it to make it fit what I'm doing. So when I was preparing for Physics 1, what I did was I did lots of watching YouTube videos to see things that I was particularly interested in. So I like slow-mo cameras, and then so I can't remember who told me about some YouTube channel of some guys who were just doing stupid random stuff. So I just effectively watched hours and hours of YouTube videos of some guys playing with a slow-mo camera, and I just came across this one video that I just thought to myself, wow, that's so cool in terms of thinking about the impulse and momentum. And I thought that would be a really good one to show for that one. And then for the walking the plank demo, I saw I think I saw someone do it with a suitcase. They said, oh, wouldn't it be fun to hang a suitcase over the bench? And then if you put a weighted block in one end, then you can effectively put the suitcase hanging over the bench. And I thought, well, why can't we just do it with a plank of wood and I'll go and stand on it? So I spent a long time in the lecture theatre with the technician, effectively me going to him, don't let go, don't let go, don't let go, because it was wobbling. And then we worked out where I could stand on it, and I could just sort of be brave enough. If I shut my eyes, he could let go. So I try and take what people are doing and then try and tweak it. And I think in some ways that's good, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. I think sometimes there's a pressure that you do everything from scratch, whereas in reality there's a lot of good stuff out there that might not fit what you're doing. You just need to tweak it a wee bit, and you can make it fit what you want it to do. So I'm quite good at that. I'm an expert Googler and I'm an expert copier. So I think that's probably one of my strengths, that sometimes I struggle with the original ideas. But if I know what I want to do, I can normally find something that sort of is along the right lines, and then I can figure out how to tweak it to make it fit what I want it to do, which is I think probably not a bad thing. But I think that's probably why I'm quite good at what I do, because I know I don't have to reinvent the wheel and I can just tweak things.
That is absolutely incredible. So first of all, so you tested the plank before that. That was one big question.
No. I wasn't going to do. There's also a big mark on the plank that tells me where it has to go and how far I can walk out to. But it scares me every time I do it. I still get scared.
And there's also only 100 people watching. So And this is probably similar. So I want to ask, what aspects of teaching do you enjoy the most? What is the rewarding thing for you?
So I suppose there's two different aspects to my teaching. So the gateway teaching I really love, because I work with between 10 and 15 students every day. They probably get sick of seeing me, and I get to know them really well. And in normal circumstances, the workshops are very interactive. So you're constantly going around and talking and asking them and helping them. And I really like that, because what you get to see is over the course of the academic year, you get to see how much they improve, because you really get to know them. So that I really like. The downside is some of them don't make it, or they decide that physics is not for them. So I invest a lot emotionally in the gateway class. So that's sometimes quite hard when it doesn't go well. And then the other thing is there's quite a lot of satisfaction taking a lecture course and making it your own. And then some lectures, when they go really well, you're like completely on a high. And then I love that. So in Mechanics 2, I worked really hard to try and make it my own and teach it in my style. And that was quite a lot of effort. I think people underestimate how much effort it is to take a lecture course. Even if you're just delivering it in exactly the same way as the person that did it in the previous year, it still takes a lot of effort to learn the material, to figure out how you want to explain things. And some of my lectures I felt went really well, and then some were just a disaster. And then you try and hide the disasters behind the smiles, and you just say, oh yeah, never mind, we'll do this again. When inside you're really thinking, oh my God, what do I do? So I think I like both aspects. I like the gateway because it's quite intimate and you get to know the cohort. And I like the large scale lecturing because there is nothing better where you teach some stuff, you do a clicker question. I actually like it when the clicker questions don't go well and you split the class and then they have to discuss, and then you can bring it all back and you can get the interactive element to the lectures. So I think both types of lecturing has their high points.
And on the other hand, is there something you do not like that is a part of the teaching job?
Oh, the marking. I hate the marking. The marking is terrible. I feel like it sucks me in, and I also eat far too much chocolate while I'm doing it. I feel like I put on enough. I put away enough chocolate to feed a small nation when I'm doing my marking, because there's anything is better than actually sitting and doing it. So you have to be very strict with yourself. That's probably the worst bit.
Okay, that sounds very relatable, actually. I wonder who actually likes marking.
No one. I don't think anyone does.
What was the worst thing that happened to you in the lecture theatre?
I don't think I've had anything too disastrous happen. I've had things go wrong. I have been halfway through a derivation and realised that I'd done it wrong. And then you'd set the problem up wrong. You just missed a minus sign up, and it was sort of like one of the very first steps in the derivation. And then you have to go round the houses to try and figure out where it was. And there is nothing worse than being in front of 100 or so people when you're trying to find your mistake. And there is one derivation I did a few years ago, and I just turned around and said at the end of it, I just looked at them and I just said, no, I've done it wrong. I can't find my mistake. I just couldn't find it, because the more I looked, the more panicky I got because I couldn't find it. So I said to them, the only thing I can do is, the result is correct. There's an error somewhere in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on Moodle after. And then I just walked out of then, and I just like, I think I needed to take 10 minutes just to try and compose myself. Otherwise, I think I would have cried. But yeah, no, nothing too disastrous. Haven't set fire to anything. I don't think I broke anything when I've been doing demos, because I'm quite clumsy. So yeah, I think that's probably the worst thing. And if that's the worst thing, then that's not too bad, I don't think.
No, that's not too bad at all. That happens to everyone, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I did some research about this, and I looked at your personal website of the at the university's webpage, and
okay.
They say, or it says that you helped initiated new teaching approaches within the school. And so I was wondering if you have examples of practice that we as students are going through that we should be grateful to you for.
So I think mainly it's the work on the gateway that I did, because the St Andrews are small intimate group teaching, and I think the gateway, because of what it's trying to do, is everything we do is very different to the whole stand up in front of 130 people, and I think that is probably quite different to what we were doing, and that sort of evolved over the last 10 years. And I also think, because I'm quite willing and outgoing, I think I've helped people like Antje push all the interactive lectures within physics, and I think that is quite key. But I think in terms of what I've done within the school, I think the Gateway programme is probably the biggest thing, and I think that is very different in terms of what we were doing 10 years ago in terms of the in terms of the sort of the teaching style we were doing. And I think there's a sort of a core of us that are coming up. Well, I want to say coming up, we've been here a long time now, but if you look at some of the education focused staff, it's myself, Paul, Antje, Charlie. We're trying to make the sub-honours lecturing as interactive as we possibly can and get away from this whole just stand and talk at you for 55 minutes in the lecture theatre. So I think that's probably, that's sort of, I think, probably where that statement came from.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Yeah, that's probably a great thing to do. And also the Gateway course, I wanted to say that's like something to really appreciate and something really important, I think. So thank you for that. I was wondering, how do you think that the university and perhaps the department handled the COVID-19 pandemic overall?
I think we've done it incredibly well. And I think a lot of the reason why it's gone so well is firstly because of how the students have handled it. I think to say we are quite a close-knit community in St Andrews. I think the number of COVID cases we've had, I think, has been a testament to how much the students have followed the rules. I think, first of all, I think that's great. I think the university on some hands has been really clear about what the expectations are, and I think that's driven this sort of sense of community coming together amongst the students to try and keep the COVID levels low. I think that's been great. I was quite worried, I think, a little bit at the start of term of what would happen when we all tried to get back to normal as much as we could, and I think any worries that I had quickly faded once I could see how the community was dealing with it. I think in terms of a school, we've been great. I think the head of school has been perfectly clear about what he expects from staff, what staff can do, what staff are reasonably expected or will be asked to do. I think that's been great. It's always been made clear that if you're not comfortable with something, you just have to say and someone will sort it. So I think that's been really good. It's always been made clear about what provisions are around, so the amount of wipes and antibacterial stuff and gloves and masks that we've all had access to in terms of the equipment we've needed. There's never been any issues with that. I know that if I've not got a mask or my mask breaks while I'm in, I can just pop along and get a new one. I was given a visor, I was given hand sanitizers, there's signs everywhere telling you what you need to do. So I think in terms of the logistics of COVID, I think we've done really well. And I think the fact, I don't want to say that we've not had any cases because I think that's just going to be jinxing things, but I think we've actually done incredibly well to say that we've managed to keep some of the face-to-face teaching going. I think that's been really good. I think in terms of the experience of the students, I think if you were to look at the staff last week when we were coming to the end of week 11, I think you could appreciate how much effort people have put into getting recordings in, trying to do the best they can in getting the resources out there, do a good job. I think the staff have really come together. And that's been really nice to see. People have been sharing experiences. If there's been any problems, we were having a weekly meeting to share experiences. So if you'd got an issue, you could just ask at that meeting and someone somewhere would have already come across your problem. So I think the sense of community that we've developed amongst the staff has been really good. And it's also been interesting because you probably might not realise this, but the academic staff have actually been doing all the tutorials at sub-honours. So we have not that they can't do it, and it's just not been in the past. We've got astronomers doing first year physics tutorials, which is new. We have professors doing first year physics tutorials again, which is not been the norm in the past, and that's actually been really interesting. I've been having conversations with Ian about, like, we've been doing this, trying to figure out which way forces are going, because obviously it's been a long time since we've done a lot of this stuff. So that's been really nice to see, actually, that people have been really sort of like getting stuck in right from the bottom up to make sure that the teaching has gone as smoothly as it possibly can be. And that's been really nice to see, actually. Yeah, I never thought I would be sat having conversations trying to do the right hand rule to figure out which way things move and what a symbol means in a solution that somebody's posted because we've not quite understood the question, and then sort of sharing hints and tips about what students have been struggling with and what someone's done in their tutorial this week, and is there anything that I can take from that. So yeah, it's been really good. I think the department has really come together. I think speaking from a personal experience, I found recording the lectures really difficult, but the support I got from the technicians to get those done and the equipment that they've provided to do that, I think has been really good. If I needed anything, I just had to ask, whereas I'm not quite convinced that probably would be true in all places. So no, I think we've done a really good job, and it's been nice to see everyone come together.
If I can say something on behalf of students, I'm pretty sure that we do appreciate all, because it has not been easy. I'm pretty sure, given how rapidly things have been changing. I want to ask, do you think there are any stereotypes about physicists that you think you fit, or any stereotypes that you're the exact opposite of?
Okay, so the ones that I am the exact opposite is, you will never, ever, 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 ever catch me wearing sandals and socks. So that's a big no-no on my point. I like to think I'm pretty normal for a physicist. It's hard to don't think I'm a physicist, so I don't really think that I fit any of the stereotypes. But I probably do in some ways. I'm very OCD. If you look at me when I write my solutions up for tutorials, if I handwrite them, it will take me about 10 attempts, because if I make a mistake, I'm just like, oh no, I need to start again. I'm getting better over that. But I think that's probably, in terms of the perfectionist coming out in me sometimes, I think that's probably quite typical of a physicist. But the sandals and socks, no offense to anybody here who wears sandals and socks, but no, that's not going to be in my wardrobe.
I didn't realize there was a thing for a very long time, but then isn't it impractical to wear sandals and socks? You have to wash the socks, like they have to get so dirty.
I don't get it. Yeah, no, it's just not me.
Yeah, of course. Then, and how do you like to spend your free time? Are there any hobbies that you like to do?
So, I don't get a lot of free time, because when I'm not in here, I'm normally running around after small humans. But what I do like to do is I quite like to get out and go for a run. I quite like to work out. I do a lot of spinning. So yeah, I quite like to get out and about. I want to say I want to get out and about in the fresh air, but at the moment when it's quite cold, I've not been very successful. But I think if I do get free time, I'm either working out, so I'm either doing some kettlebells or some Pilates or something where it's a bit of downtime, or you will see me sat on the sofa watching the Great British Bake Off with a nice cup of hot chocolate or something. So yeah, I think that's probably my two favourite pastimes.
Very nice indeed. And if you had a free weekend, just no work, no responsibilities, how would you ideally use it, if I can ask?
If I had a free weekend and it was just me, I would go for a very nice walk down a nice beach. That was how I'd start it off. I'd then go to a nice cafe and have a really nice lazy brunch. Then I'd go home. I would potter for a wee bit in the house, and then I would cook. So I like to cook, and I think I would just have a nice glass of something, and just let the evening just sort of roll in. And then that would be it. That would be me in front of the telly then for the evening, in front of a good film, a good sci-fi film.
Good choice, indeed. Sounds really interesting. And do you have a place that you keep coming back to that is somehow special to you?
So that's quite a difficult one, because I always felt like I've moved around quite a lot. But I've been in St Andrews now for 10 years. So I know if I'm having a bad day and I want to get out, then I go for a walk down the beach, down the West Sands. For some reason, I quite like walking across the golf course. I don't know what it is, but I think it's just the view that you get of the beach coming towards you, and a quick brisk walk down the beach, and then come back into work, and everything sort of seems a bit better. So I always find myself drawn to the West Sands. I don't know why, but I think that's my sort of calm place that I quite like. That and Kingsbarns Beach. Oh, I love Kingsbarns Beach. So if I want to go further afield, I'll go for a walk down the coastal path out towards Kingsbarns.
That's a good tip, yeah. And I agree. West Sands is absolutely stunning. It's a great place. Mm-hmm. If we can now move into the round of, we call it quickfire questions. So I'll ask a question, and the answers would typically be a bit shorter, but if you want to elaborate, feel free to do so.
Okay.
The first quickfire question is classical mechanics or quantum mechanics?
Oh, classical mechanics any day.
Okay. This one could be a bit more controversial. Thermodynamics or fluid dynamics?
Oh, thermodynamics, I think.
Okay. And what is your favorite music genre and your favorite song, maybe?
American Idiot by Green Day. So that sort of punky rock type thing.
Favorite beach in St Andrews? I think you've answered this.
Yeah, West Sands.
Okay. And do you have a favorite animal?
A favorite animal? No, I'm so sorry. No, I don't. I don't. No, I haven't had a pet. I can't have pets, so I never really think about animals. Okay, favorite animal. So I like horses, I suppose. Yeah, I like horse riding, so horses.
And perhaps to finish this off, if I can ask a finishing question, so feel free to elaborate on this one. Is there something that you think we can learn from the COVID pandemic in terms of teaching and education? And do you think it taught us something about ourselves?
I think COVID's done many things, and I think people have been affected by COVID in very different ways. I think in terms of the teaching, one of the things that I have learned is that people think they want to study by watching videos, but in reality they don't learn very well when they're watching videos. I think we have had many years in the department where students have insisted that they have video recordings and they want to learn from video recordings. They think they can learn from by watching videos. But I think that the interactions that we have in person are vital. So the discussions we have in the lecture theatre, the discussions you have on the way into the lecture theatre, the discussions you have after the lecture, the interactions that we have with each other, I think they are so vital. And I think that is what is the biggest shame about COVID, that we've lost all of those, or we've lost 90% of those. And I think the key to successfully learning and mastering these topics is to talk to people. Now, I think what we've done is we've found ways around that. So we have our workshops on Teams, and we have small breakout rooms, and we're getting better at it. I think as the semester's gone on, I think people have been really good at coming forward and asking questions and having discussions. And I think that's been nice to see that we are adapting to things. But one of the things that I have learned from COVID is that the face-to-face teaching we do at St Andrews is key. And actually it's what makes St Andrews St Andrews. We have these small lab classes, we have small tutorials, we get that interaction with staff, and I think that's for me, is what makes St Andrews unique, because not many departments keep that, because they have such large numbers that they can't have that small, intimate interactions anymore. And I think that's what I've missed the most. And I think if students were honest with themselves, that's what they've missed the most. There's nothing worse than sort of sitting, doing some work and not being able to ask somebody. And I think people realise now that they were always working with others, whether it be just asking somebody if they've done this question or talking about things. And I think what this has made me realise is that we need to work hard over the next few years to make sure that if we do grow in size, that we don't lose that contact that we have with our student body, and the students don't lose contact with each other, because I think that's what makes the university experience the best it can be, by having and keeping that interaction. And I think a lot of the staff have realised that as well, that we are going to work hard to make sure that when we can get those back to normal, that we do find ways to make that happen.
Thank you very much for this answer and for all the other answers, and
no problem.
Most importantly for your time.
No worries.
Thank you. You've been listening to Inside, the University of St Andrews Physics Society's podcast. I was your host, Veronika Sarlakovi. Thanks to the wonderful academics of St Andrews. Join us in the future as we learn more of the people making our education. To find out more about the Physics Society and what we do, please find us on Facebook or Instagram, or search for St Andrews Physics Society for our website. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.